Well, Razorback fans, I had a great discussion with Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC today about Taylen Green and how good he can actually be in this conference. So let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of the John Nabors Show, which you can catch every weekday afternoon from 4 to 6 on Natty State Sports and nattystatesports.com. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Wednesday as we're going to be watching a little Razorback basketball tonight in the SEC tournament. I'm not even going to talk about them today, but it does happen tonight. And I know that we'll be doing a live stream on Natty State Sports. So if you want to check that out, I'd appreciate it, as me and Andrew Ellis will try to make the most of it. But still, there's still spring football, though. And that's really where the discussion is I want to make the most in dealing with the Razorbacks, because I believe that there are still so many great things to choose from and to view. And when we have a chance to check out practice, not only filming the first 20 minutes, but actually getting to look at some of the good stuff from it, I think that there's a lot of positivity that comes from it all and to be able to take it from it. So bear with me on some of this. But I wanted to bring up the deal with Taylen Green. And he's going to be the starting quarterback for Arkansas next year. I think we've established that. I think we've discussed it enough. I think everybody's on the same page for that. But I believe there are reasons also to think that this year with the quarterback position at Arkansas, not only can Taylen Green be really good and be an upgrade at quarterback from last year, but possibly be one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the SEC next season. Now, some of you are saying, okay, here comes the sunshine pumping, here comes the Kool-Aid drinking and everything, and okay, that's fine. You want to believe that? That's fine. But looking at the SEC and looking at some of the quarterbacks that are in this conference next year, and some of them are returning starters, others are not. Some of them are just guys that are going to be new transfers coming in. Some of them may be freshmen, sophomores that were on the team before, moving up in the world. But either way, it's quite a hodgepodge. I think you got, of course, his name just escaped me. Geez. You got Georgia's quarterback. How did I just forget his name? That's terrible. All right, well, sorry, you're going to have to bear with me. It's my memory. You're probably yelling at me in the screen, in the comments right now. But Georgia's quarterback is a guy that is going to be a returning starter. You have Jackson Dart over at Ole Miss, I guess, as a returning starter. But other than that, it's kind of up in the air for a lot of these teams. Even if they are starters that are returning, it doesn't make you feel like, oh, man, like Connor Wegman over at A&M. I know he played last year and started last year and they got hurt, but how good is he actually going to be in this system? And it's a new coaching staff and everything. But it just doesn't have the same star power and the same firepower heading into this season as it maybe did a year ago or even a few years prior. It just doesn't. And that's okay. It's not necessarily saying that the SEC is going to lack the talent, because there should be some guys that emerge. Who's to say of what happens at Mississippi State now that Jeff Lebby's down there? He's had a lot of great quarterbacks under him, and he's coached a lot of great quarterbacks, so who's to say that that doesn't keep going here? But specifically looking at Taylen Green and looking at the system that he's in, especially with Petrino, I think there's a possibility that Taylen Green could be a top 4 SEC quarterback in this conference. And I guess I'd be remiss to not mention Texas, as they do have a guy named Quinn Ewers who's pretty good, and Arch Manning who backs him up, who's going to be pretty good. So I think without question that's the best quarterback situation in the conference is Texas. But still, I think Arkansas can have a quarterback in Taylen Green that could be a top 4, top 5 quarterback in the SEC statistically. Now, number one, of course, it needs to be dealing with his health. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be able to just go out there and perform and play the quarterback position that how he needs to play it. But he also needs to go out there and be healthy, be smart. Don't take unnecessary hits, get out of bounds, slide. I know that Petrino is definitely going to coach him up on that. But that's the key to having success, as we all know. Duh. Was it the best? I'm not even going to try to say it because I'm going to screw it up, or I could see it in my head. But you know what I'm saying. Availability is the best way to be able to be out there and competing. So that's first and foremost. But second off, why I think he could really take some tremendous strides heading into next season is because he's an experienced quarterback. He hasn't been in the SEC, I get it. But he's an experienced quarterback who has a dangerous weapon with both his legs and his arm. He has a coach in Bobby Petrino, who is a quarterback whisperer, if you want to call it that. One of the best minds of developing quarterbacks, and it's had a lot of quarterbacks that have been very successful at the college ranks. I mean, a guy like Lamar Jackson, never heard of him. Ryan Mallett, never heard of him. Tyler Wilson, never heard of him. Yeah, a lot of great quarterbacks out there. So thinking about that and knowing that that's the situation that he's walking into, with also veteran wide receivers helping him out. I mean, say what you want about the talent, but Andrew Armstrong's that dude. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what I really like in spring practices, but Andrew Armstrong is a legitimate big-time wide receiver. And I think he's the number one guy right now as the wide receiver crew goes. So you got him, you got Tesla, and you got Tyrone Broden and Isaiah Satania. All those are very experienced wide receivers. Are they top wide receivers in the SEC right now? Maybe not, but they could be. But regardless, you have experienced wide receivers with a lot of different gifts. And then you throw in a tight end like Luke has, who that dude is as good as they come at the tight end position, just from what we've been seeing in spring. So he has the weapons surrounding him to be able to make him effective, because we know in the Petrino offense, it's always going to be about those wide receivers, those routes, and executing the plays and being attention to detail oriented that is so badly needed. And then you throw into the mix the offensive line. Now, I know that that's the thing that's going to be the biggest question mark on the offense, because running back, I think you're going to be just fine. So how's the offensive line going to develop? How are they going to get better? Well, they can't get much worse, and I think they honestly are going to be better. Are they going to be as good as what you saw in like 2014, 2015? Probably not, but they still have guys that have addressed some needs, whether it's Carmona, whether it's an Addison Nichols. So with the transfers, Josh Braun's returning. They're figuring some things out, and I guess the thing that I enjoy the most in seeing these spring practices is just knowing that those five guys on the starting offensive linemen are getting it going and doing some really good things. But the point is that Taylen Green has everything he needs to be successful in this conference. Wide receivers, experienced wide receivers, talented running back, and an outstanding offensive mind and quarterback coach in Bobby Petrino. Everything's there. It's just a matter of the pieces coming together. Can they protect Taylen Green? Can Taylen Green protect himself? Keeping healthy, staying on the field. And can he do the things that we know he's capable of in the Petrino offense? Can he be the leader? Can he be vocal? And can he develop and get it going in the right direction? I think it's all there. All the pieces are there. It's really up to him. As weird as it is to say and as funny as it is to say it, it's up to him. Bobby's going to do it. Wide receivers are going to be there. I like the situation. And in the SEC, I know Ole Miss is going to have a really good passing attack. I know the Mississippi State's going to have a really good passing attack. I know Georgia's going to have a solid quarterback there. I know that there's going to be other teams that have really good passing attacks. You know, at the LSU situation where they replaced Jaden Daniels, you know, who's going to replace him and how's it going to look? You know, those are the things where I'm like, it could absolutely be a difference maker. But this conference is wide open, not only in the ways of teams, but also in the best quarterback. That's wide open. We'll talk about some of the things that I like in spring practice and just some of the things I've seen and like so far. But first, I got to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain, from your vehicle to leveling up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I got a chance again, as I mentioned, watching spring practice, and we've got a chance to see 3 of them, I believe, in the media. And I've checked them out and seen some things that are really telling. Actually, not overly telling, because it's spring practice, for crying out loud. You got to take that into consideration. There are some things you can take from it, and it's great to watch. I'm never going to complain. But to sit here and say, oh, this is how I know how good Arkansas is going to be based on one practice, that's just absurd. You can base on guts instincts. You can base on development. You can base on what you've seen, the execution-wise in practices, and what looks really good and what doesn't. But overall, there's still just so much uncertainty. However, there have been some things I've liked, and I do want to mention. I already talked about Taylen Green. I've really liked Taylen Green, and I even mentioned Andrew Armstrong a little bit too. But to take it one step further, Andrew Armstrong has all the pieces. When I've been watching him in these practices, not only has he been making great catches because he's a gifted athlete, he's very tall, he's got great hands, but there's been a lot of plays that have come open for him where he is wide open. Now, some of you may say, well, that's a bad secondary play or whatever, and we'll talk about the defense and some of the secondary in a second. But from at least what I've been seeing, it's not a common denominator where a lot of these wide receivers are just getting wide open. A lot of times it's just Andrew Armstrong making a great play, making a great fake, running a great route, whatever. And the fact that he ends up being wide open is just a tribute and also a great thing for a Bobby Petrino type coached offense and some of the things that go along with it. So I'm going to look at it in that way, at least from what I've seen in the limited action that we have seen. I love Andrew Armstrong, what he's been doing. Tyrone Broden's been another guy that's had a really great fall. Big, able-bodied wide receiver. He's made some big plays. And I think he's listed at 6'7". He might be 6'6", 6'7". But having those two guys on the outside is going to be really beneficial. And Luke has. My goodness, dude. I know I keep talking about him, but I'm going to keep bringing it up till the cows come home. That dude has Mackey Award-winning potential. And this year, I'm talking about. He's got all the pieces. He's making one-handed grabs. He's trying to work really hard on run blocking. In fact, that's one of the things he said he's trying to do much better on is run blocking, which can develop and it can get there. But I just really, really, really like what I've seen on the offense, especially in the skill position guys. Running backs look good too, but I need to see more of that. I want to see more of that. And who really settles in as the guy. The Utah transfer has been so good. He looks the part. I think he might be the dude. I think it's Jaquindon Williams, I think is his name. I'm bad with names tonight, folks. I apologize. It's been a long day. But, yeah, I think he's going to be really good for Arkansas. And then if you throw into the mix a couple of other pieces on the defensive side, Landon Jackson's great. In fact, in the practice this morning, he had a strip of one of the wide receivers, if you can believe it, and fumbled and ended up getting a scoop and score. I don't remember who had the score, but it was a great defensive play by him. I think Landon Jackson's going to be great. I think you got Cam Ball and Eric Gregory and some other guys that are going to be really good for Arkansas on the defensive line. How good? I mean, are they going to be next-level talent guys, or are they just going to be good enough to put together a successful run in the SEC and just not get obliterated? Like, just be good enough to hold your own. Can they at least be that? I think they can be. But I've been so impressed by the secondary. I'm not kidding. Jalen Braxton, funny dude out there, but he's looked really good in times. I think about him. I think about, of course, Hudson Clark. Say what you want about him, but he's an experienced guy who knows where he's supposed to be, and he's done a great job with it. So I've liked what we've seen out of him. Jaden Johnson has looked really good. And, there's just snacks. It's been great, too. I mean, there's just so many pieces to this team and then the secondary that makes you feel really confident that this team in the secondary is going to be better, or at least just as good. It might even be the strength of the defense, which if you have that, it can open you up to some other things too. It can open you up to a rushing attack or a rush defense that can be a little bit more effective, but also opening it up for one of the bad things that I'm going to bring up, the linebacking core. Because I'll be honest, I like Arkansas's top 2 linebackers, and Xavion Sorey and Brad Spence, but that's it. That's it. I haven't seen enough out of everybody else. That doesn't mean nobody can step up. That doesn't mean nobody's any good. But I just haven't seen it. The depth is scary bad at the linebacker position, and I am very worried about it. Because I think you got 2 really good linebackers, or at least SEC caliber linebackers. And after that, it is, I don't know. I don't know. So that's concerning, and that's really the biggest part of the defense. I don't even think it's close as far as being the most concerning thing. In offense, the offenses look so good, polished in the first part of it, and at least in here in spring ball, that I guess I would say offensive line is still a question, even though, again, I think they have the top 5 guys in there because they've been the starting 5 pretty much the entire time. Tykeus Crawford isn't even rotating anymore. I mean, you got Addison Nichols, you got Carmona, you got Josh Braun. I think all those 3 guys alone are really going to hold their own too. And, just basing it off of how things have gone, it just looks like those are ones that the offensive line with Eric Mateus has settled on. And I like that. I like that. I like that this offense is like, all right, we got to figure some things out. It's like, no, these are our 5 best guys, so let's just stick them with it and they can get used to it. This is our best quarterback. Let's just stick with this guy and let him roll with it. I like just approaching it and where you know and you move forward. No messing around. You know and you move forward and you develop it. Then, and I guess another thing too is about Taylen Green in the quarterback position. He's the guy. Establish that. The QB2, backup quarterback, completely wide open. I can't even track who's getting the more reps. Jacoby Criswell, Malachi Singleton, KJ Jackson, they've all been in there about as equal amount of times. Some of them run with the 2s, some of them run with the 3s. So as of right now, it seems that QB2 is wide open, which you kind of may scoff at. You're like, who does it matter about backup? Well, it matters a lot because just knowing about college football and trends, starting quarterback's going to get banged up, he's going to get hurt, and he's going to have to get some time in. So, and sometimes in really big situations, being on the road against SEC opponents, that absolutely could happen. So just be on the lookout for that. I don't care who wins it either. I don't care if it's Criswell. I don't care if it's Jackson. I don't care if it's I don't even care if you're throwing out Austin Ledbetter, like whoever. I just want to see it and put in a position to where it's going to make sense, it's going to work, and I feel good about whoever's coming in afterwards. That's the main thing. But we'll talk a little bit about baseball because they are number 1 in the country. Is that a bad thing? Well, stay with us because I got to tell you first, though, about saying goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or just a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if the first $5 bet actually wins. That's $200 to use on spreads and money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I haven't had a whole lot of chance to talk about the baseball team a little bit, but they are getting ready for SEC play coming up this weekend against Missouri. And it's at home, and they should win that series. Not saying they'll sweep, be nice, but they should win that series. Stovall's back, looking good. Pitching's looking solid. Offense is starting to put some things together. Still want to see more, but they're getting better. They're improving. But overall, it's going to be an interesting weekend. Because also the weather, I don't really feel like it's going to be overly warm. So cold weather can sometimes play a factor. But either way, they should take care of business in that game. But the thing is that you see that number 1 next to Arkansas's name, and people start to get weird about it. I looked in the replies and in the comments of when Arkansas was officially number 1 in a lot of these polls, and people were just like, oh, we don't want that, blah, 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 blah. I started laughing about it because I guess the whole rule about, hey, no number 1 overall seed has won the College World Series since 1999. And, you never want to be that number 1 overall seed. Arkansas was that number 1 overall seed, 2021. They didn't even make it to Omaha. Like, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But we're not even in postseason. We're not even to conference play yet. To me, I love being number 1 right now. This is great. Because Arkansas looks like the best team in the country right now. For all intents and purposes, like they do. They look like the best team in the country. They're not going to win every game. Shoot, they probably won't even win every SEC series because it's only been done twice in the history of the SEC, and Arkansas was one of those teams to do it just in 2021. So it's pretty rare. They're going to drop some games. They're going to have some struggles. They're going to have some problems, but it's about playing your best baseball at the right time. And Arkansas has all the pieces, all the pitching. They got the defense, and the offense is going to continue to grow. They got all the things that you really need to make sure that these guys are going out there and performing their best, getting it done, and being in a position to where they can actually make a run into the College World Series and get in Omaha. So bring on number one. I love being number one. Because even last year, folks, I know that LSU won the World Series, don't get me wrong. But the number one overall seed last year was Wake Forest, and guess what? They made it to the World Series. The World Series final, I should say. So, I don't care where you're at. Would I feel a little bit uneasy if Arkansas was number one seed going in? Maybe. But it's about hosting. It's about getting a national seed and doing whatever it takes to get to that point. So as long as you get to that point, everything else is going to be absolute cream cheese for the Razorback baseball team, especially when they take care of business each and every weekend against SEC opponents that they should take care of business against, like Missouri this weekend. But we'll have to wait and see. Appreciate everybody listening in to Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.